For the past few months on our research hub, I've been bringing you incidences of government overreach, incidences that I believe are really important for us to understand and grasp when it comes to government control of us as citizens. I brought you the digital ID, the information about digital ID, and governments deciding to implement that, whether we liked it or not. And the fact that that has stalled a little. I'm not going to say it's been halted at all, because they're trying their best to do it by other means. I then brought to you the facial recognition technology that's being implemented throughout our towns and cities in the country without any consultation from us. And the fact that government have just decided they're going to do that. We've spoken about CBDC. It's not a topic that has come up at a government level yet, but it's coming. And I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into CBDC. So that's central bank digital currency, where you will have no cash and everything will be controlled by a computer database, which will be easily hackable. I spoke to you about jury trials and the government wanting to do away with jury trials, and the fact that jury trials are one of our fundamental rights. We've had jury trials for eons, and it's a way to make sure that that government and powers do not overreach when it comes to finding people guilty or innocent. I've also spoken to you about their wanting to do a curtailment of protesting, because if we protest and we all join together, then we might actually realise how strong we are as a community, and that is scary for the powers that be. And the latest thing that has come that immediately set alarm bells going for me is this 15-minute city idea. And the reason it sent alarm bells through me was because it feels like lockdown again. It feels like you will be in your home and you will not be allowed to go 15 minutes outside of your home. So you can travel around any direction for 15 minutes, but apart from that, you'll be in a zone and you'll stay in your zone and you won't be able to cross that zone. And that was my initial reaction. It was like, oh, here we go. So they're going to stop us protesting. So if you want to protest in London and you live in Birmingham, you won't be able to, because that's not in your 15-minute area. So these were all the things that were coming up for me. And I, just like a lot of other people on social media, I got very, oh my God, about it. And I was really quite upset. It was another one of those control things. That's how it felt. And no consultation again. Or that's what I thought, no consultation, because they've started it in Oxford and they've decided they're going to do it in Oxford, and they're going to roll it out in different cities and towns in the areas. So obviously I was not best pleased, because it's another form of government overreach without consultation. So I decided to check it out on the social media platform that I found it on initially, which was X. And this is Alan, and I'm just going to read you what Alan has to say. We used to have lots of places in the UK where you could get most of what you needed within 15 minutes walk. School, GP, grocer, butcher, church, pub, children's playground, sports club. We called them towns and villages. Then along came central and local government. They encouraged large chains to build out of town supermarkets, forcing town centre butchers and grocers and fishmongers out of business. Now, we all know this. I'm in Gateshead. If you walk down Gateshead High Street, it's just empty shops, empty shops. They planted acres of new housing around towns and villages with no facilities, and too far away from town centres for people to walk there. They also sold off sports grounds and playgrounds for more housing. They built centralised super hospitals, moving patient care away from their local neighbourhood while running down the GP service and replacing it with call centres and apps. They raised business rates and car park prices in town centres and installed lots of bike lanes and traffic calming, thereby narrowing roads and causing more traffic congestion, reducing footfall and sending town centre shops out of business. They closed pubs, playgrounds, sports clubs, churches to save us all from a deadly respiratory virus. And now what do they want to do? They want to recreate these 15-minute communities that we used to have in small towns and villages, but in bigger towns and cities instead. Only they're not doing it by encouraging small businesses to open neighbourhood stores, or reducing local business rates, or decentralising the National Health Service, ensuring we can all live in that same 15-minute paradise. No, they're doing it by installing traffic filters and CCTV and enforcement infrastructure and fines. All stick and no carrot, creating new inner city ghettos. There is seemingly no situation which central and local government cannot make worse. Now, when I read that, it's true. It's true. The big money corporations, the big supermarkets, they've got lower pricing because they buy on bulk, and it has completely priced out any of the smaller shops. The bakers, the grocers, the greengrocers, the fishmongers, the butchers, they can't compete because they're independent and they're small. So what he says is true, and obviously that incited me a little bit more. And then I came across Jake. So Oxford just capped how often residents are allowed to drive. You now get 100 free days per year passing through camera-controlled zones. Go over automatic fines from the county council. Expanded areas as few as 25 days a year. This isn't a one-off, it's a preview. Under C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group planning strategies, meat 16 kilograms per person per year with long-term goal trending to zero. So they want to take out meat under this C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. Flights by 2030, 0 to 1 short-haul flight per person per year. Cars, sharply reduced private vehicle use inside cities. Officials call it sustainability. Critics call it managed movement and consumption becoming policy. At the same time, multiple US cities are studying similar traffic restriction models. A Gates-backed smart city is already building core infrastructure in Arizona. Full build still years out. So this is him. Climate progress or Hunger Games, he says. So I'll let you listen to him. We'll start him from the beginning.
They are going to divide Oxford into 6 15-minute neighbourhoods, and you're only allowed 100 days of free travel per year through these 6 traffic filters during operating hours. Meanwhile, a separate permit allows 25 days of free travel per year through these zones. After this, you will face severe penalties because you will not, it says it in black and white, you will not have the relevant permission. Greg Smith, the Shadow Transport Minister, said this is the blueprint for a national rollout. Labour has been given the green light for draconian councils like Oxfordshire to police how people live, move and drive using cameras and fines backed by DVLA data.
So, hearing that, I was even more incensed. You could imagine. Yeah, very, very upset about that, because if they're doing it there, they're going to do it all over the country. So then I found Marie Caulfield, CBE. And I don't think this is a video. I think this is, no, it isn't. Restrictions on movements being introduced in Oxford, depending on where you live in the city, dictates how often you're allowed in certain parts. Doesn't matter if you need to travel to work or look after an elderly parent. Coming to a city near you soon. And she shows the Oxford County Council's charging. They're going to charge you £75 if you go outside the allowed 100 permits. So you can now apply for congestion charge permits online. Register for a free online account. Select the permit you be eligible for and upload the requirement documents. So you have a central permit area. Residents living in this area can apply for a free permit for unlimited car journeys and 50 visitor passes. If you have workplace parking, you can apply for a commute permit. Oxford permit area. So that was the central permit area of Oxford. Oxford permit area. Residents living in Oxford permit area can apply for a free permit that gives you 100-day passes per car per calendar year. You can apply for a maximum of 3 cars. Oxfordshire permit area. Residents living in this area can apply for a free permit that gives you 25-day passes per car per calendar year. Households can apply for a maximum of 2 cars. And there are additional permits. They are available for certain groups, including blue badge holders, so disabled people, unpaid carers, community health and care workers, mobile traders, and patients requiring to attend frequent hospital appointments in the Oxford area. And they show you where to apply. So it's gone ahead. And this lady, she's very upset about it. So I thought I would show you her. 15-minute open-air prisons are here and being rolled out at record speed. We are not a free country. You can see how impassioned she is before I even set her going.
Around the town centre, around the centre. If you're allowed to, you're allowed 100 days a year to travel through these 6 different traffic filters. If you're caught, and you will be caught because it's all what's it called, recognition from your registration recognition. So there's no, you can't avoid it. Just don't bother coming to Oxford. Another area they've ruined. If you get caught using these areas more than your allocated allowance, you'll get severe penalties. Is there anything else they can do to us? I honestly can't believe that this is England. This is the 21st century. We are now being told what we can and can't do, where we can and can't go, and how many times we can and can't go there. And if you go there more than your allocated allowance, you will be severely fined. I'm going to live in China. I am going to go live in Korea.
So she's very upset, as you can tell. And here's another one, concerned citizen. 15-minute cities are a concept the World Economic Forum have created called C40 cities. It's diabolical. You won't be able to drive a petrol or diesel car. This is what you can eat today. This is what you can buy today. If you violate this, they will freeze your bank account. London of mayoral candidate Shaim Batra discusses this 15-minute cities. Oxford in England is now the first city to fully sign up to the plan, and work has already begun converting it into a 15-minute city. So we'll hear from him. It's not overly long. It's only a minute.
The 15-minute cities is something that the WEF has created called C40, and it's called C40 cities. I would urge you to certainly look on the internet about it, and then go to all of the TikTokers and see what they're really saying. Basically, you won't be able to drive a petrol or diesel car anymore. You'll have to buy electric. If you want food, you will get a calorie-controlled system sent to you by text saying, this is what you can eat today. This is what you can have today. If you violate any of these things, they'll freeze your bank account. That is the next step. These are stages in which they're going to implement this stuff. And this was signed up by the WEF, and the WEF has signed up with our mayor in London as the chair, and he has gone around the world to communicate this C40 to all of the countries in the world, and most of the countries are looking at adopting it. Now, I am going to abolish it. It is a hopeless position. We are going to be in an open prison, or shall we say a COVID, for the rest of our lives. We will not be able to work unless it's in our 15-minute city. It's diabolical.
There you have it. It's diabolical. It's outrageous. And if you wanted just to get a visual of where this has been implemented somewhere else, no better place to get a visual than China. An apartment building in Hangzhou, China, that houses 20,000 people. You're locked in unless your biometric digital ID is code green, indicating you're up to date on your vaccines. 15-minute cities coming to a nation near you. So that's enough to put the willies up here. So you can imagine I was distraught, thinking, oh, God, here we go. This is like the next level of control. This is the next level, especially when you listen to that guy that's going up for Mayor of London. But I want to point out to you that these posts that I've shown you on X can be really, really disturbing. The first one I showed you was really truthful. All the big supermarkets have pushed out any of the independent butchers, grocers, bakers, and they have started building around the outside of cities where you have to come into the city to be able to access the things that you need, because they haven't actually incorporated into that the infrastructure that is needed for those smaller urban areas. So things like that are true. But the rest of it, as my blood started to boil, I had to sit and meditate on it for a minute and think, okay, well, we need to look at this from a research point of view. We need to look at this in a space of, okay, where did the concept of 15-minute cities come from? Where did it start? What's the origins of the story, to see how we've got to this level of control now, and follow the pathway. Let's walk the pathway and see where it's all gone wrong. 20,000 people encapsulated in a building that aren't allowed to leave unless they've got a green light. People not allowed to go further than 15 minutes from their zone, or not allowed to go out of their zone. When did that happen? How did it come about? How did we think that this was such a good idea? So I decided to do some digging, and I decided to do some research. And I was surprised to find out that this guy, Ebenezer Howard, he was born in 1850. I thought 15-minute cities were quite a new concept. I thought they were quite a recent concept, but no. You've heard of Welwyn Garden City? Well, he died in Welwyn Garden City, and he was the founder of the Garden City movement in England. And I mean, like I say, he was born 1850, so we're talking the early 1900s when this first became established. So that's Ebenezer Howard. Let's take a look at the Garden City movement. So it's a method of urban planning. So it's not new. It's not something that's brand new. So you've got these are Wikipedia, which is can be altered and stuff, but that's where it started. So it shows you, see Garden City Movement for a list of garden cities, see list of garden cities, garden town, garden cities. But the Garden City Movement was a 20th century urban planning movement promoting satellite communities surrounding the central city and separated with green belts. These garden cities would contain proportionate areas of residences, industry, and agriculture. Ebenezer Howard first posited the idea in 1898, so he was 18, as a way to capture the primary benefits of countryside and the city while avoiding the disadvantages presented by both. In the early 20th century, Letchworth and Welwyn Garden City were built near London according to Howard's concept, and many other garden cities inspired by his model have since been built all over the world. So with that first post we looked at on X, where the chap was saying that, yeah, we used to have all of this. They were called villages, villages and towns. This is where the concept came from. The correct principle of a city's growth. So this chap was looking at the center. You can see from this diagram here, the central city, and then having garden cities that were separated by green belt. And they were successful, so successful that they sprung up all over. So that was the very early incidences. Then we have this guy, Clarence Perry. Now, Clarence Perry was born in 1872, and he was an American urban planner, a sociologist, author, and educator, and he devised the Neighborhood Unit Plan, a residential community scheme disseminated through the Regional Plan of New York and its environs in 1929 that influenced planning in US cities. So effectively, these, we call them now 15-minute cities, and people are shouting and screaming about the imposition of these 15-minute cities. We've had them for ages. And it just goes to show you how, if you just go by social media, how you can be taken down a rabbit hole that actually doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. These things have been in place for a long while, and they've been beneficial. They've been a beneficial addition. So let's have a look at Clarence Perry's Neighbourhood Unit Plan. So the neighbourhood unit, generally, the concept of the neighbourhood unit crystallised from the prevailing social and intellectual attitudes of the early 1900s. It's an early diagrammatic planning model for residential development in metropolitan areas. It was designed by Perry to act as a framework for urban planners attempting to design functional, self-contained and desirable neighbourhoods in the early 20th century in industrial cities. It continues to be utilised, albeit progressive and adapted, as a means of ordering and organising new residential communities in a way that satisfies contemporary social, administrative and service requirements for satisfactory urban existence. Again, villages, where you've got your little shops, you've got everything within a 10 to 15 minute walk. That's what it originated as. And it wasn't a control mechanism. It was to make life easier. It was to make life more suitable to the people that lived in those areas. So it wasn't anything untoward. It wasn't what I initially thought. No, 15-minute cities, even though they've become really prominent over the last month or six because of what's happening in Oxford. No, they're actually to help the community. There is a way to help the community again. So if they're going to build a new community, a 15-minute city, if you're looking at it as a brand new community, then it will have the infrastructure for your baker, your grocer, your butcher, the health services that you require, all of these things within a catchment area that you'll be able to utilize and access. And that will therefore take the pressure off the bigger cities that have got the main hospitals, the main things that service providers, because you have service providers within your area. For existing cities and towns like Oxford, it's slightly different because they're zoning it into 6 zones, and there will therefore need to be the ability to access all of those services within those 6 zones if you're not going to be permitted to drive more than 100 times through those zones. So it just means that the infrastructure needs to be rebuilt within existing cities in order for people to be able to have access to the services that they need. And from my perspective, when I sat and I thought about it, I thought, you know what, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. It's fantastic. Right. The reason it came about, if you think about the time scales, Perry conceived of neighbourhoods in this time period as islands locked amidst a burgeoning sea of vehicular traffic, a dangerous obstacle which prevented children and adults from walking safely to nearby playgrounds and amenities. Perry's neighbourhood unit concept began as a means of combating this obstacle. Ultimately, however, it evolved to serve a much broader purpose of providing a discernible identity for the concept of the neighbourhood and of offering to designers a framework for disseminating the city into smaller sub-areas. So it was from the fact that the motor industry was embraced and lots of, they were suffering street fatality rates in excess of 1 child a day back then. So the advent of the motor car, it all blew up. Everybody wanted cars, and the amount of cars that were on the streets in these neighborhoods was causing death to children. And that's why he came up with it. It said during a period where road sense had not yet amalgamated with the social conscious, and many of the urban tools we now use to manage the threat posed by vehicular traffic did not exist or were not in abundance, such as pedestrian crossings, traffic lights, and road signs. So that was the early adoption. That's why it was put in place. It was to safeguard against the amount of cars that were coming, the amount of cars that were on the road. And that it was a big issue. So then we move a little bit forward in time to this guy. Now, this guy, let me get his name right, Carlos Marino, and his new book, A Solution to Solving Our Time and Our Planet, the 15-Minute City. So that came out in May 2024. So I'm going to read you the book description. A fresh and innovative perspective on urban issues and creating sustainable cities. In the 15-Minute City, a solution for saving our time, our planet, human city pioneer and international scientific advisor Carlos Marino delivers an exciting and insightful discussion of the deceptively simple and revolutionary idea that everyday destinations like schools, stores and offices should only be a short walk or bike ride away from home. This book tells the story of an idea that spread from city to city, describing a new way of looking at living that addresses many of the most intractable challenges of our time. Hundreds of mayors worldwide have already embraced the concept as a way to help recover from the pandemic. and the idea continues to gain speed. You'll learn why more and more cities are planning to make cars far less necessary for contemporary city dwellers and how they're planning to achieve that goal. You'll also find strategies for cities to recover and adapt to benefit residents, saving them precious time. Techniques to change the habits of automobile-dependent city residents and maximize social benefits of living in a human-centric city. Scientifically developed, research-backed solutions for enduring urban issues and problems. Deeply committed to science, progress, and creativity, Marino presents an essential and timely resource in the 15-minute city, which will prove invaluable to anyone with an interest in modern and innovative approaches to consistently challenging urban issues that have bedeviled policymakers and city residents since the intervention of the car. So that's the guy that has most recently weighed in and called it 15-minute cities. This is the new idea. So cities today, this is a piece in Cities Today, and it's speaking with Carlos Marino. After enduring a wave of conspiracy theories during the COVID-19 pandemic, the 15-minute city is proving to be a resilient concept. Based on the work of Carlos Marino, a professor of the Sorbonne University in Paris and special envoy for smart cities for the mayor of Paris, the idea has a simple premise. City dwellers should be able to access most of their basic needs within a 15-minute walk. So just that sentence, city dwellers should be able to access most of their basic needs within a 15-minute walk or cycle. That turned it right the way around for me, because it's not a have to. It isn't a you have to access all your basic needs within that 15-minute walk or cycle. It's people should be able to. Like when we had villages, a little village, you'd have all of your amenities within the village, and it would be more or less a little self-sufficient place with a big green belt of land around it that went to the next village or towards the next city. The approach aims to reduce dependency on cars, promote healthy and sustainable living, and improve the overall quality of life for residents by having necessities including grocery shops, childcare, schools, workplaces, and healthcare based within their neighbourhoods, something that we are sadly lacking. While its origins go back to the 1920s, as we've already researched, I was pleased to see, the concept became increasingly popular during the late 2010s and has been implemented in cities globally, including in communities in Barcelona, Paris, and Melbourne. But it was during the COVID-19 pandemic when many cities seized the opportunity to reorganise their empty streets and in many cases take space away from cars. The idea took off and at the same time became fodder for conspiracy theorists. Claims that people would be confined to zones were exacerbated in the UK when some cities implemented controversial traffic measures which restricted car use on smaller neighbourhood roads. The lines between those low traffic neighbourhoods and Marino's concept became blurred, leading to a confusing array of online theories, some of which then filtered into mainstream discourse. Several UK cities have subsequently moved away from the 15-minute label due to the negative connotations generated online. The Oxford City Council, who have largely embraced the concept, removed the phrase from their local plan in Local Plan 2040. So Oxford has got a plan, a local plan called Local Plan 2040, and they've had to remove the wording 15-minute city, because even though now we know it doesn't mean confined, doesn't mean kept in. Now we know it's to do with reducing the amount of cars that are on neighbourhood roads, so it's a safety issue. They've taken it out, but the social media, I mean, I was incensed when I looked on X and I found all those things, and all I did was put in 15-minute city, and that's what came up on X on a search. There wasn't any grounding in proof. Nobody had gone away and done any research. It was just absolute mayhem over control. It's all about control. For Marino, who has received several death threats and accusations of being part of a World Health Organization-led plot to control how people move within cities, the backlash was entirely driven by social media and not reflective of the changes being made on the ground or what has happened since. Okay. So that's cities today. And there was a paper that was written that you can read, you can download it, introducing the 15-minute city, sustainability, resilience, and place identity in future post-pandemic cities. And this is written by Carlos Marino and his cohort, just to give an understanding of what it's about. And it's free. You can download it all. I'm not going to read it all because it's huge, it's long. But one unlikely boost toward achieving sustainability in cities came through the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, which, due to numerous challenges, prompted the need for novel and innovative mechanisms for cities to pursue their economic activities while enforcing strict health protocols. However, before innovations such as the use of virtual communication options, cities that were partially or totally locked down experienced unprecedented changes, such as the shortage of basic supplies such as food. A sizable number of urban residents also faced unemployment as companies and institutions downscaled due to the low demand and supply of basic materials and services. The emergence of this pandemic exposed the vulnerability of cities in their current establishment and the need for a radical rethinking, where innovative measures need to be tailored to ensure that urban residents are able to cope and continue with their basic activities, including cultural ones, to ensure that cities remain both resilient and livable in the short and the long term. The need for this radical rethink, coupled with pressing socio-economic issues, led cities to adopt urban planning mechanisms to ensure that quality of life is preserved beyond the fractures that the virus will possibly leave as legacy in cities. On this note, policymakers view it as a necessity to provide proximity-based services to inhabitants by reviewing urban policies, particularly transportation, viewed as a connective thread to solving other issues. In view of this background, we propose to study a conceptual approach that has captured the attention of many politicians around the world, the 15-minute city as imagined by the first author, Carlos Marino, the implementation of which was accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the concept is a good one. The concept of what he's proposing is beneficial to people that live in neighbourhoods. It's about cutting down the amount of cars, the amount of traffic in local neighbourhoods or in neighbourhood areas, and ensuring that neighbourhoods, should there be any reason to not be able to move outside of those neighbourhoods by car, have access to everything that they need within a 15-minute walk. That's not a bad thing. That is a good thing. That's progressive. That's moving forward. That's a progressive thing. So this is Grist, and they did an article, a spotlight article on the same man. And I'm just going to take you through a few things that they point out. There are a few exceptions, a few things they point out. There are a few experiences more soul-sucking than sitting in traffic. According to NPR, the average American lost nearly an hour a week to traffic congestion in 2022. Drivers lose an additional 17 hours per year hunting for parking. USA Today reports, and in the same survey, 34% of US drivers said they had given up on a trip because of parking problems. By contrast, picture living in a bustling neighborhood where all your friends' basic needs and even your job are reachable by a quick walk or a bike or a bus ride. Something many people experience, possibly for the first and last time, on college campuses. In such a city, parking areas may have been reclaimed as urban greenways. Chance encounters with neighbours might be more common, and small local businesses would proliferate and thrive. This vision is sometimes referred to as a 15-minute city, a concept pioneered by Franco-Colombian scientist and mathematician Carlos Moreno. It means basically that what it sounds like. Instead of expecting residents to get in their cars and drive long distances to work, run errands and take part in social activities, cities would instead be designed to provide those kinds of opportunities in close proximity to where people live, reducing overdependence on cars and increasing social local coherence. So again, all really positive. His human smart city idea puts humans rather than controlling technologies at the centre. This was based on the triple convergence of tackling climate change for ecology, the fight against poverty through economic development and social structures to counter racism and populism. His livable city later acknowledged the concept of proximity as another key piece in the urban jigsaw. It's a good way to create a new way of living differently. And there's his graphic. So if you imagine your home as the center, you get to work, share and reuse, stock up at the grocery store, enjoy the outdoors at parks, be engaged in your community at community centers, take care of your health at your local health center, stay active at your gym, eat healthily. And this was the concept, to bring communities together and to have everything within that space. Doesn't sound so bad as they made it out on X. So how can we achieve that? We need to create green infrastructure, green areas, water fountains, protected bike lanes and more services in proximity through local jobs, commerce, cinemas and theatres and public spaces for cultural activities. We need to radically transform the neighbourhood for fostering people who decide to abandon a car-centred life in favour of a human-centred social fabric. That's the American University of Cairo, who again interviewed Carlos. You can watch the videos. I mean, you've got all the links here. That's the American University of Cairo. And you can hear about his 15-minute concept. Now, this is the University of Built Environment. So why are 15-minute cities so controversial? And you can understand the controversy now because I gave you that at the beginning and I've now given you the idea of what they're actually about. So I'm going to let this speak for itself. 5 benefits of 15-minute cities. For all the controversy that surrounds it, there are numerous benefits to this concept that have already been seen in real-world application, including less reliance on vehicles. 15-minute cities are by design intended to reduce the use of vehicles, as all of the amenities and destinations residents need will be accessible within a short distance. This offers a wide range of benefits, including reducing traffic congestion, to reduce carbon emissions and the encouragement of greater physical activity. They've got a link there. Why is the traffic in my city so bad? And anybody who's ever tried to drive around a city, like I wouldn't go into London. I drove around London twice when I lived down in the south. And there's no way that you'd get me to drive around London again. What a nightmare. And obviously it's like that in Oxford. It's an issue. The amount of cars that are travelling through Oxford is an issue. So reduced pollution, better air quality. So another benefit of reducing people's dependency on vehicles is a subsequent reduction of pollution. Air pollution resulting from cars and buses, and accordingly to the British Medical Journal, causes 8.43 million premature deaths per year. Adopting an urban planning model that reduces the need for transport can help address traffic and congestion, and as a consequence, improve air quality. It can also help address noise pollution, which has been directly linked to health stress-related illnesses and hearing loss. It boosts local economies. Even though the 15-minute model is most famously being implemented in large cities, it's equally applicable to smaller and less urbanized areas, where it can help to encourage more footfall and create employment opportunities for residents, providing a valuable boost to local economies. Enhances public health and well-being. Lack of pollution, cleaner air, and increase in green spaces and easier access to amenities will improve quality of life and encourage residents to go outside, walk, and partake in physical activity. This has a knock-on effect for their physical and mental health and will help combat depression and loneliness. Improved social opportunities. Along with commuting, social visits and entertainment are among the most frequent journeys any resident is likely to take. Adopting this urban model can help create more closely knit communities where residents have ample choice for where to socialise and engage with one another. And the limitations, so we're not being biased just for the four. While 15-minute city idea has become the centre of many unfounded conspiracy theories, the concept has also attracted fair criticism from planning professionals. So, fueling class divisions. Many fear that the implementation of a 15-minute city strategy will drive further inequality in cities and fuel class divisions, pricing out people with lower incomes from being able to live in and even access certain areas. Yeah, I could see that. Obstacles to implementation. Implementing this urban planning model on a large scale, particularly in cities and towns that are already well established, requires significant coordination and oversight. It's a process that is bound to encounter obstacles from overhauling transportation planning and providing pedestrian-friendly infrastructure to regulatory barriers, equity and funding. It could increase congestion. Despite its aim to reduce traffic, one concern of the 15-minute city model is actually the impact it could have on congestion. Part of implementing this plan will require the transformation of existing transportation planning and routes, which can actually create more traffic and congestion outside of these areas if not handled appropriately. Mobility concerns for those with disabilities. While this urban planning concept might improve accessibility for some, there are concerns that it could actually exacerbate difficulty for others, particularly people with disabilities. As author Anna Zivarts commented in an article for Bloomsburg, focusing on this 15-minute window of easy time puts us into the mindset of prioritizing efficiency, which fits conveniently into a framework that values speed over access. Many argue that the concept of a 15-minute city is relative, and for those with disabilities, this planning framework fails to cater to them and will actually make accessing facilities for them even more difficult. And finally, overwhelming of essential services and facilities. Another potential drawback of this concept is its impact on facilities and services. If residents are conditioned to travel to amenities within a 15-minute walk, ride, or bus journey, health services can eventually become overrun in areas with higher population density, particularly during seasonal illness and in situations like the COVID pandemic. So that's taking it from both sides. That's looking at it from both sides. So that, when I'd finished, that was the last little bit of research that I'd done, kind of tracing it from the origins of how it started, right back at the early times and the garden cities, and then moving it through the neighborhood plan, and then now it being rebanded as 15-minute cities. It's a thing that we used to have in place that was then done away with, as I showed you on the very first X page, the post that I showed you. We used to have all this. We used to have this in place, and it wasn't an issue. It was good. And gradually it became eroded over time. So that was the change over time. I was thinking right at the beginning, oh, right, okay, how did this start and how did it get so bad? Well, actually, this started in a really well-meaning way, and it was implemented and it was good. And then it got bad because all of those amenities got taken away. All of those individual amenities that we used to use within villages and towns, they got taken away in favour of the big multi-corporate structures that are the big supermarkets. This is now saying we need to bring back the way we used to do it. So it's correcting a problem rather than making a problem. I didn't want to leave it completely there though. So I thought I would be a little bit controversial and ask good old Claude. And Claude, I think, chastised me a little bit. I'll tell you the question I asked Claude. Now let's bring it right up to date and look at the latest imposition of 15-minute cities in the United Kingdom. Comparing to other 15-minute cities across the world, how does the UK stand up with its imposition of fines and effectively borders that cannot be crossed? Because that's what we were led to believe on social media, that this was a confinement. And good old Claude, I want to gently push back on some of the framing in your question before we dig in, as it contains some assumptions worth examining. Let me search for the current UK situation first, so we're working from accurate, up-to-date information. So this is a topic where the framing matters a great deal. So I want to give you an accurate picture and be transparent about where your question's assumptions hold up and where they don't. Here is what the sources actually show. So what is actually happening in the UK? Oxford is by far the most prominent UK case. Oxfordshire County Council has proposed installing traffic filters as a trial on 6 roads in Oxford. The traffic filters are not physical barriers of any kind. They are simply traffic cameras that can read number plates. If a vehicle passes through the filter at certain times of the day without an exemption or a residence permit, you receive a fine in the post. The fine is £75. Residents of the affected areas can apply for permits, and there are exemptions for buses, taxis, blue badge holders, emergency services, health workers, and people receiving frequent hospital treatments. Crucially, buses and taxis can pass through freely at all times, and people can walk or cycle through them at all times. These are restrictions on driving through specific roads at specific times, not on leaving your neighbourhood. Oxford City Council itself has stated explicitly, the misinformation online has linked the traffic filters to the 15-minute neighbourhoods proposal in the City Council's Local Plan 2040, suggesting that the traffic filters will be used to confine people to their local area. This is not true. So how does the UK compare internationally? This is where the comparison becomes really very revealing. Paris emphasised cycling and neighbourhood services. Barcelona's superblocks restrict through traffic in parts of the city to create calmer streets. Melbourne and Portland have piloted 20-minute neighbourhood policies tailored to local geography. Many of these initiatives combine small-scale physical changes, bike lanes, pedestrian plazas, with planning and economic incentives such as support for local shops and zoning changes rather than a single sweeping law. In fact, the 15-minute city proposals do not involve any restrictions on travel by car. Unrelated measures introduced to reduce traffic in some cities has been conflated with 15-minute cities. None of the comparable international cities, Barcelona, Paris, Melbourne, Copenhagen, Portland, use fines or permits to prevent people moving between districts. The Oxford scheme is actually a fairly conventional traffic management measure using camera-enforced filters similar to London's existing congestion zone, which was been operating since 2003 without controversy of this kind. Where the borders framing comes from. Some conspiracy theories conflate the 15-minute concept with the British low-traffic neighbourhood approach, which involves licence plate scanners in some implementations. This has led to assertions that the 15-minute model would fine residents for leaving their home districts or that it would confine people in open-air prisons. In 2023, then Transport Secretary Mark Harper declared at the Conservative Party conference, "I'm calling time on the misuse of so-called 15-minute cities," criticising the idea that local councils could decide how often you go to the shops and ration who uses the road. However, no such powers have been proposed as part of the 15-minute city concept. In the United Kingdom, However, no such powers have been proposed as part of the 15-minute city concept in the United Kingdom. Despite being specifically debunked in a guide given to MPs by the leader of the House of Commons in 2024, Health Secretary Maria Caulfield included the fiction in a local election leaflet and reiterated it in a BBC interview. So, Claude's honest summary. The UK, through Oxford's traffic filter trial, does involve camera-enforced fines for driving through specific roads without a permit. That part is real and checkable, but the characterisation of these as borders that cannot be crossed isn't accurate. Anyone can walk, cycle, take a bus, or drive via alternative routes at any time. Compared to international equivalents, the Oxford scheme is actually more restrictive in its use of fines than most other cities implementing 15-minute city principles, but it is also far narrower in scope than the zone lockdown described in some coverage. The legitimate debate is about whether traffic management by permit and fine is the right approach. The claim that it confines people to zones is not supported by what the scheme actually does. And then we get all the sources from Claude as usual. So it's a load of hogwash. Effectively, what's happening in Oxford is their neighbourhood roads are overrun by cars, which is generally putting people at more risk. So, and like I say, I've visited Oxford, but I visited by train. I haven't actually driven through Oxford, so I wouldn't be able to talk to you about the amount of congestion that's on their roads. But if the congestion is such that it's causing neighbourhood distress, then the zoning off of 6 neighbourhood areas to be able to reach the city centre is not such a bad thing. And it's not that you can't go outside that. It's not that you're confined within that. It's a traffic system that's bypassing neighbourhoods in order for those neighbourhoods to be safer. It is not confining. It is not government overreach. It is not the control mechanism that it's being made out to be. I'm pleased to say. I am very pleased to say. But I just have to reiterate that when you read something on social media that boils your blood and incites your anger and draws you to all manner of conclusions, as soon as those feelings come up, do some research. Go and do what I did. Go and really just take a deep dive into where it's come from, why it's there, what's happened, and how it's changed over time. And just like me, you may well change your mind and look at this as being actually a really great thing for neighbourhoods to just have the amenities they need within the areas that they live.